Hi, I'm Angie Brown with buildingbetterleaders.org. I am your leadership coach and learning facilitator. In today's video, I want to give you 4 tips on how to set your expectations and lead your team in a much better way. My first tip is to actually know your expectations. So it's really important as a leader that you know what you expect of your team. What behaviors are you looking for? What results are you looking for? How do they work together to achieve those goals? And so it's really important that you spend some time thinking about what are my values? What's important to me as we achieve our results? How do we want to work together? And it is important that you are very clear on those expectations. The reason I say that is I have worked with many leaders and they will be talking about a team member who isn't performing up to expectations or who isn't doing this or that or, whatever that might be. And I will ask them, so what are your expectations? And often, and I mean often, the leader goes, I'm not really sure what my expectations are. So be clear, spend some time with yourself and think about what is the end in mind? What is your goal? What is it that is important to you so you can have a clear understanding, clarity around here are my expectations. So tip number 2 is you've got to communicate those expectations. Your team are not mind readers. They do not have the ability to wonder what your expectations are. Well, they can wonder, but they don't have the ability to read your mind and to try to decipher your behavior and all that crazy stuff. So it's really important that you just communicate your expectations. Now, when you communicate your expectations, it is important that you do that face to face, if at all possible. I see leaders who really don't like conflict, and sometimes they will email their expectations. Blech. Get up, have a one-on-one meeting with your team, your individual workers, and say, here are my expectations for this project, for how we work together as a team, whatever it is, communicate in person. The reason for this is not only because email can be often, miscommunicated and misconstrued. What's the meaning of that? And why did they write that word? And why, whatever. It's also because you are developing relationships with your employees. They are the most important piece of a workplace, are the employees. And so you're developing relationships with them, and you want to make sure that you can check for understanding. The third tip is to check for understanding. We often think that when we say something, that the other person on the receiving end of that information fully understands what we want. And so it's important when we do our expectations, if we do them face to face, via Skype, via FaceTime, whatever method you use in your company, go-to meetings, if you have that ability to see someone's face, then you can check for the non-verbal cues that maybe they don't understand, or maybe they're nodding their head, but they have a raised eyebrow or something. You can check for that understanding. The other thing is I used to work with this great leader who would say to his staff, here's what I want. We're going to go do this. And then he would pause for a minute and he would say, did I miss anything? Tell me what you heard so we can see if we missed anything. The interesting thing about it is that most of the time his staff had heard him correctly in what he wanted. They were right there in sync with him. Sometimes they would go, well, we heard you say this, and he would go, is that what I said? And then he would think, and he'd have to go back and clarify what he meant. So what's interesting about that is we often think that they're just not listening to us. That's not the case. If you listen to any of my conflict series, we talk about the stories that we have in our head and our own filters that we use when people talk to us. So it's important that we use language that is common, that we are all clear. And sometimes the only way to do that is to check and see what filters the other person has used in the understanding of what you want. So the third tip, again, is to check for understanding. So my fourth tip is to hold people accountable. Accountable. So I've noticed that we all want accountability except for when it comes to us. So we must hold ourselves accountable first. And then the other thing is we must hold our team accountable. Accountability feels sometimes like such a scary thing to do. And it's really not. It is as simple as in your one-on-one meetings with people, ask them, how's that project going? When are you going to have that done? Do you need anything from me? How are you coming in the steps to this? Where are we at in X, right? It's really just a question. Now, I do know leaders who hold very strict accountability, and they also micromanage the entire project. That is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about checking in along the way to see how your team and individual performers are doing on the goal. It's really easy. And it must be done. We absolutely have to hold people accountable. If we don't hold ourselves accountable and we don't hold those on our team accountable, the surrounding teams and departments know it. They see it. This is sometimes where we get into this, well, how come so-and-so has to get their stuff done and so-and-so doesn't, right? It's important as leaders that we hold that across the board accountability for our team. So again, I want to let you know those top 4 tips. Number 1, set your expectations. Know what they are and be clear about them. Number 2, make sure that you communicate your expectations. People are not mind readers. Tip 3, make sure that you check for understanding of the other person that you're communicating to. Tip number 4, hold people accountable. You don't have to micromanage. You do, however, have to check in and make sure that things are getting done. If this video has been helpful for you, I really encourage you to like it, to comment below, and also share it with fellow leaders. My goal in doing these videos is that we can have some leadership tips and techniques along the way that help make us better leaders. Until next time, thank you for watching and have a great week.